You're an example. Thanks. Yeah, just right here would be great. My sons, look at my sons. I'm going to talk about family tonight. My sons are just building me up here. This is great. Yes, thank you, son. Yeah. All right, thank you. And welcome tonight. I'm obviously not Pastor Tom or any of those guys, but I'm thankful to have an opportunity to talk tonight. If you remember from way back in maybe February or March, we talked about what the theme for the year at LBC, Liberty Bible Church, would be, and that's family. I just want to talk about building family. So tonight I want to spend a little bit of time just talking about what makes a strong. Hopefully on that chair in the center aisle there's both prayer sheets and there's a handout. Does everybody have a handout that would like one? It's going to be a fabulous opportunity to take copious notes tonight and just put this somewhere like on your fridge or something at home to keep forever and refer to how can we have a really godly, strong family. I'll wait for people to kind of shuffle on in here. It looks like there's so much more that you guys kind of consolidated, so thank you for doing that. Yeah, that's great. I don't feel quite so alone now. Up here, Scott. Up here, Scott, if you get some. All right, as everybody's kind of getting started, I've got this daily devotion that I use. It's one of them. This one's called Day and Night, or Morning and Evening, Morning and Evening. And it's an old one, so forgive the language, and it's a Charles Spurgeon devotion. And a couple weeks ago, I came across something that was really appropriate, I think, because the day that Pastor Tom had asked me to do this was the day that this was the reading for the day, for the afternoon reading. So there's morning on one side and evening on the other side. And I thought I would just try to read some excerpts from it because I don't want to take up the whole lesson time just reading through this particular thing. But it's really, it centers on the importance of raising your families to know God and how important it is to have God in the center of your families. And it uses Joel 1:3. It says, "Tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children and their children another generation." And it says, "In this simple way, by God's grace, a living testimony for truth is always to be kept alive in the land. The beloved of the Lord are to hand down their witness for the gospel and covenant to their heirs, and these again to their next descendants. This is our first duty. We are to begin at the family hearth. He is a bad preacher who does not commence his ministry at home." I'm going to skip down a little bit. It says, "To teach our children is a personal duty. We cannot delegate it to Sunday school teachers or other friendly aides, these that assist us. They cannot deliver us from the sacred obligation. We cannot have proxies or sponsors. We need to teach our own children." And I'll skip down to the bottom and how it ends. It says, "It is a pleasant duty to talk of Jesus to our sons and daughters, and the more so because it has often proven to be an accepted work for God has saved the children through the parents' prayers and admonitions." So I think just kind of tuck that in your minds. It's a sacred duty for us to teach. And some of you in here might be grandparents, and you've taught your children well. Some of you might be parents now teaching your children. Some might be children or young people themselves that don't have children. Just tuck that in your mind for when you have children. And just remember that how important it is for that. So with that, I'm going to pray, and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, I thank you for each person who's come out here tonight, and I thank you for an opportunity to just talk about families and how important it is for us to put you in the center not only of our individual lives, but in the center of our families, that we could just pass down the knowledge and grace that you have for them through generations. Father, as I go through this study tonight, I pray you'd give us discernment to understand what you'd have to teach, that you give me words to use, and that more than anything, you would be glorified as a result of us gathering here tonight in your name. Through your Son, I pray, amen. So I like to use, I don't know, not acrostics, but just things to trigger people's memory. So you should have sheets. Again, I'll ask, does everybody have a sheet? And on it, you have just an outline. I'm going to talk about really 5 C's tonight. And, just, I don't want to keep anybody, I confessed before, when I read a book, how many people in here read a book, they kind of read it like this, they look at the front, and they look at the back, and then I'll actually read the last couple chapters and just kind of skim through it to make sure I really want to be interested in it, because time's valuable, So I'm going to skip to the end here tonight, and I'll look on the back of my sheet. You can look at the bottom of yours, and it literally says the 5 C's that we're going to look at tonight are commitment, communication, communion, communication, coping skills, and consecration. So some of those words we don't use a lot, but I needed C words, so I picked these words tonight. So that's why we've used those, and we'll explain them as we go along and how they fit. But the first point I make on here is strong families are committed. And the caveat I'd put on here is all of us in our lives, we've made mistakes. And I'm going to be humble here in front of my sons tonight. They're sitting here. They're going to listen to me talk through these things. And I'm going to say, this is how we should have a strong family. And this is how we should anchor ourselves today and work towards. But we all make mistakes throughout our lives. And God's grace covers us on that. These are things that we're going to talk about tonight that are reminders to us and the things that we strive for as we serve the Lord. So strong families are committed. Commitment is the assurance that this family will stay together and value each other for a lifetime, no matter what. So that's what commitment is. And you don't have to raise your hands or nod or anything, but if you are in a family right now, which you are, just think about how much stronger your family would be if there was a undertow of that commitment, that no matter what, your kids, your spouse, your parents, whoever it is, they understand that you have a commitment, that we're going to stay together no matter what for our lifetime. That's our commitment. There's a couple different commitments in a family relationship. First, I'll talk about the commitment to marriage. Ecclesiastes 9:9 says, enjoy life with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life that he has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. So think about that for a minute. That's your lot in life. That's your portion in life, is to enjoy the spouse that's been given to you. I hope you all look at your spouse, those of you that are married in here, or those that will someday, and just look at your spouse and go, I am so thankful that God has given this person to me. What a blessing it is. What a helpmate, what a joy it is to have this person in my life. And if you don't, we're going to talk about how you can have that attitude later. So back to the beginning, Mark 10:6 says, but from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. So that's God's expectation for us. We're not to cling on to our parents. Once we marry a spouse, we're no longer to cling on to our parents and look to them for our leadership or the center of our life. We're to respect them. But once you cling to a spouse, that is your family. And that's how God has created us, to become one flesh. So I'll ask this question. Is it love that sustains commitment? Or is it commitment that sustains love? This is not a rhetorical. This is small enough you guys can. So I'll ask it again. Is it love that sustains commitment, or commitment that sustains love? So maybe in other words, is it, if I love you enough, can I stay committed? Or do I say, or is my commitment to continue to love you? Which is it? The latter, right? It's the latter. Because love is, I've told people this, and some of the people that know me are probably tired of me saying this, love's not a fairy dust kind of thing. Love's work. You've got to make up your mind and say, I love this person. And you've got to work at it. You know, you've got to overlook their problems, and Kim's not in here tonight, so I'll say I have to overlook her problems. I don't really have a lot of issues for her. It's easy to love me. No, that's not true. It's easy to love her. But you have to work on that. So you remember that it is commitment that sustains our love, to be committed to our spouse. It's saying whatever problems we face them together. Strong couples say, I'm committed to you no matter what. And you might even have this discussion at the beginning of your marriage. Just say, the word divorce is not in our vocabulary. It's not a system that we're going to look at. So Malachi 2:16, anybody know what Malachi 2:16 says? It says, for the Lord God of Israel says that he hates divorce. So again, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. We all make mistakes. We all have issues. What we're talking about here tonight is what it takes to build a strong family. It isn't looking back on what things we've done in our past or thoughts we've had or whatever it is. It's being committed to where we are today. So that's commitment to marriage in my point one of strong families are committed. Anybody want to guess what the other commitment is? It's on your sheets, right? Commitment to your children, right? Commitment to your children. There are two ways you can convey a sense of commitment to children. The first is to make sure they know that they are a great blessing and precious to you. I hope you guys know that about me and you. You guys are just a great blessing, and I think about you all the time. Think about all my kids all the time. And I'm so thankful God has given me these children and grandchildren. But it's one thing to know that, and it's another thing to tell them that and act out your life in such a way that they see that in you. And I'm sure I fail at that a lot. You can talk to these guys afterwards and talk about all those ways, but they need to know what a great blessing they are and what a precious gift they are to you, and that's what you have to do. You need to remind them that they are a blessing, not a burden. There are no mistakes, accidents, or surprises with God. Tell your children they are a blessing and be deliberate about telling them that. Psalm 127:3 says, children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring a reward from him. And this one here will get you choked up a little bit. I didn't know whether to say this or not, but I think it drives home such a valid point, such a hard point. It's from a suicide note from a teenage girl. And in the note she said, dear Mom, I'm sorry I was ever born. It seems to me I've ruined your life. I've chosen this way so that you might be happy again. Could you imagine a child reading that or having that heart that they were so feeling of unloved and unappreciated that they thought, I'm just a burden on my family. We need to let our kids know that they're not a burden, that they're a blessing, that they're such an important part of our lives, not only to us, but to God. So that's my first point under commitment to children. The second point is make sure they know they are loved unconditionally. Make sure that they know there's nothing they can do to be more loved because they're already loved with a measureless love. And there's nothing they can do to be more accepted because they're already totally accepted. And there's nothing they can do to be more valued because they're already infinitely valued. And this is a big one too that sometimes I think we tend to do, maybe even subconsciously. Don't make them work for something they should be given freely. And that's being loved. Don't make them work for love. Don't make them think that if I just do this or that, they'll love me more. There's nothing that they can do to have you love them more. Now, that's not a free pass for the kids. You still have to balance instructing them and giving them correction, because Proverbs says what about instructing a child? If you love them, you'll give them punishment, right? You'll correct them. If you don't love them, you don't really care what they do. You just let them run off and do whatever they want. So there's a balance on that, but they need to know that they're measurelessly loved, totally accepted, and infinitely valued. So that's my first point. Strong families are committed. The second point is strong families have communion. Okay? Communion is just really my C word for spending time together. Strong families spend time together. Communion is a time you spend maybe around the table eating, talking, laughing. Maybe it's just the end of the day, just sitting down at the couch and talking about your day with them. Just hanging out. It's not sitting there watching the TV, though, because, that's better than ignoring them, but realistically, sitting there watching the TV, you're in a different world. But Psalm 128:3 says, your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house, Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. This is interesting. There was a survey done of 1,500 children, and the question was asked, what makes families happy? Over 90% said that it was doing things together with mom and dad. It's not a big house. It's not new video games. It's not lots of money. It's not latest technology. For a family, love is spelled T-I-M-E. Get it? For a family, love is spelled time. So work on saying yes whenever anyone asks you to spend time together. I know that's hard for us sometimes. Sometimes you just get home from work and I just want to just sit here. Would you just let me just sit here? But I think you'll find more joy in the times that your kids come up and say, hey, you want to play a game of pool, Dad? Yeah. Maybe in my brain initially I'm like, nah, I'd just soon sit here. But no, I'd rather go play a game of pool or go out and play some bocce ball or fly a kite or go fishing or whatever it is, just whatever your kids ask. Because I'm standing here before you guys. I'll turn 60 next Sunday, have 5 kids, and they grow up. And sometimes they're just not there to say, hey, do you want to go play some cards or play bocce ball or play pool? And you need to redeem the time. When they ask you to do something, do it. It's because families spell love, T-I-M-E, right? Spend time with them. So strong families have communion. That's point number 2. Strong families are committed. Strong families have communion. Point 3 is strong families have, it says good communication. Let's call that great communication. I'm going to upgrade it right now to great communication. Proverbs 16:24 says, gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Good communication is always done with respect and love, which involves patience and focused listening. So you probably saw that on there and you thought, good communication, what's he going to talk about? They're able to share ideas back and forth. No, really what I want to talk about is how we communicate our love to our kids. And I think the first thing that we need to do is to be observant. So the 4 B's of good listening you'll see on your sheet here. The first one is be observant. Look them in the eye. Pay attention to their body language. Show them you're listening. I know it's easy sometimes, and I'm sure we've all done it, that when somebody's talking to you, it's easy just to kind of drift off and think about whatever your next thought's going to be, Sometimes when people are talking to you, you're already thinking about what your answer is going to be instead of focusing on what they're saying so you can truly understand what they're saying. What I'm saying with your kids is you need to focus on what they're saying, and your wife, and really everybody, but this is all about building a strong family, and I think it begins with our kids. So look them in the eye, pay attention to their body language, and listen. Show them that you're listening, and you're focused on listening. The second one is back to that time thing. Be available. Be available when your children and spouse need you. And sometimes it might be in the middle of the night. But trust me, those are some of the best ones. When they come to you at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, I need to talk to you about that, that means they really trust you, and they really cherish that time together, and that they're looking for your wisdom. And so be available for them whenever they ask. The point C here, or the third point of the 4 B's of listening, is be considerate. This is one that really strikes me. I see this a lot. It's amazing how considerate we are to other people in public. We're just on our best behavior when it's somebody. I might say that about myself and here with you. I'm on my best behavior when I'm talking to all of you. I'm just you before you, please. Thank you for holding the door, but you go first. Even there, just all that kind of stuff. We're just so polite. So listening to everybody. And for some reason that changes at home. You're a little bit more demanding of your spouse and kids, and maybe a little bit less gracious. So again, we can be rude to our own family members. So as you think about this point, extend the same grace and courtesy to loved ones as everybody else, if not more. We should not be so demanding or rude to those in our household. We should treat them like honored guests. So that is point 3. Titus in 3:2 says, slander no one, be peaceable and considerate, and always be gentle towards everyone. And finally, in the 4 B's of listening is be physical. It doesn't seem like that makes sense really, right? You're listening, you're being physical. but show them that you love them physically. Hugs, kisses, touching, that type of thing, kids and your spouse certainly. If you remember Gary Smalley, he was an author. He still is an author, I guess. I've kind of lost track of where he's at. He did a lot of work on these types of things. I think we talked about this the other day, and I think I didn't look it up. I always give him credit for 5 love languages, but I think I was corrected the other day that he didn't actually write that. Does anybody know? Gary Chapman, so not Gary Smalley. Some Gary guys are pretty sharp, though, on this whole love thing. But Gary Smalley, for sure, said a relationship needs 8 touches a day, a strong relationship, and we're talking about your spouse. So, and he also made this point that doesn't mean, he was talking to the men, he's like, that doesn't mean you get up in the morning or you just roll over in bed and you take your hand and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, done. That's not what it's all about. It's when you come in the door, you go give your spouse a hug. And when you leave in the morning, you give them a kiss, you give them a hug. And I know that I sometimes when I joke around with other men in my family, whenever they go somewhere, I'll say, hey, how about giving your wife some love here before you go? And they're like, what? I'm like, give her a hug, man, come on. So I think that's important too. Be physical. And your kids, well, what do we do before we go to bed every night, guys? They're going to be embarrassed now. Huh? This guy here does a 2-pat out, maybe a side one. This guy here, I can't get him off me sometimes. He's a hugger. So anybody wants a good hug afterwards, Luke's your guy right there. But we hug it out before we go to bed. Is that embarrassing? Is that okay? Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, he's a good hugger. So be physical with them. Show them you love them. And that's what this whole thing's about tonight, is building a strong family. It's not about ignoring people. It's about saying, hey, I love you, and you're important to me, and you're the most important thing to me, this family. And so that brings me to my 4th point here, my 4th C. Strong families have good coping skills. And this is something that we see in the church, and I'll look at Pastor Ben, because he deals with counseling, in the community and so forth. There's a lot of bad counseling going on in the community. There's a lot of bad counseling going on that's not coming from the Bible. So that's the point I'll say, is don't rely on the advice of the world when it comes to the family, because the world's really messed up on families right now, that's for sure. Our communities are really messed up on how families, how they work. So look to biblical counseling. Look for biblical advice and Christian advice. Give God the priority in your family is a thing we'd look at. Going back to this coping skills, again, build your life on biblical principles and you'll have good coping skills at home. We've got to learn to attack our problems together instead of attacking each other. Remember, back to what we started with, 2 become 1. And you should be on the same side in these types of situations you get into. And finally, the last C that we're going to talk about here tonight is strong families prioritize consecration. Again, we don't use that word too often, but really what I'm talking about there is dedication to God. So strong families are visibly and focused on consecration, or focusing on God, making Him the center of their family, being dedicated to Him. Only by giving God the first place can we have a truly strong family. Give God the priority in your family. Daily devotions and prayer together are a must. And give the church the priority. Give church the priority. Coming to church and learning. It's not about legalism. It's about just taking opportunities to be taught God's word, to know God more. God has given us His instructions for life. I know that seems cliche. He's given us everything we need to know about Him in His word. We need to be in that word all the time, learning about God. We have a very short life here, and we need to figure out what it is that God expects of us. We need to learn what His character is so we can emulate that character. We need to figure out exactly what His plans are for each one of us, and then we need to, as servants would do, go after that plan and glorify Him and such. Psalm 127 says, "Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain." Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Joshua 24:15 says, "But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." A study once disclosed that both mom and dad, a study once, this is my closing statement here, some stuff you might want to jot down because I think it's kind of interesting. A study once disclosed that if both mom and dad in a family attend church regularly, 72% of their children will remain faithful to God and remain going to church. Now for us, that seems like a fail, right? Because that's a quarter of them don't. But this is a national survey of just people in general. So you can kind of think about all kinds of people that are around us in the communities today. So I'll say that again. If both mom and dad go to church regularly, 72% of the children that they raise will be faithful to God and remain going to church. If only dad goes to church, if only dad remains faithful to church attendance, that'll be 55%. So it drops from, if both go to church regularly, from 72% clear down to 55% if just dad goes to church. What do you think it is if only mom goes to church in a household? What percentage of the kids continue to be faithful to the Lord and go to church? Shout out some stuff. 26? What else? 20? 40? What? 15? You have my notes? It is 15. Yeah, it's 15. 15. Wow, that's pretty bad. Well, you know, if neither attend regularly, I would think this would almost be zero, but it is almost zero. It's 6%. So if neither father or mother go to church regularly, only 6% of the kids will go to church and be faithful to the Lord. So what you can get from that is the example of parents is more important than the efforts of the church, right? The example of the parents, the example of the things that you do, and I'll include grandparents in there too. Parents and grandparents, we need to be good examples to our children and be committed, consecrated to the Lord. So let's work to make our families stronger through these 5 C's that we talked about. The 5 C's, again, are commitment, no matter what, communion, time together, communication, let's talk and listen to one another, coping skills, let's attack problems together as one person, and consecration, being dedicated as a family to the Lord. That's what I have for tonight. It's kind of a little bit shorter tonight. Tom said that nobody would probably be angry with me if we cut a little bit short tonight. So with that, Joe and Michelle back there, I'm not sure who's running stuff, but do we usually normally, was that online? Okay, we're going to shut it off now, right, for prayer time? Is that right? Okay, thank you for doing that.